And now, the greatest radio shows of all time.
Suspense.
The Shadow Node.
Washington calling David Harding, counter-spy.
Classic radio theater.
The Great Gildersleeve.
Fibber McGee and Molly.
Dragnet. Gunsmoke.
The Lone Ranger.
Now, step back into our time machine with your host, Wyatt Cox.
Good evening, friends of the Inner Sanctum.
Tyrone Power, starring in a program, Freedom USA. This episode of the program, in which Tyrone Power plays a United States Senator, broadcast November 2nd, 1952, a story about international trade.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to hear the story of a United States Senator. You are going behind the scenes of political Washington, into the Senate chambers, the cloakrooms, the private offices, the meetings, secret and public. The locale, the background, are factual. Only the names and the stories are fictional. This is Freedom USA. Starring Tyrone Power as a Senator of the United States, and featuring the voice of America's distinguished news commentator and Washington authority, Edwin C. Hill. Freedom USA, the story of your government today.
This is Edwin C. Hill, ladies and gentlemen, speaking to you from the gallery of the United States Senate Chamber. On the floor below, freshman Senator Dean Edwards, again the shattering precedent.
No positive proof exists. I urge that we stop these ships immediately and force them to put into a friendly port so that a thorough investigation may be made.
Senator Dean Edwards proposing that our government interfere with the commerce of a half a dozen foreign vessels engaged in international trade on the high seas so that their cargo may be investigated. A startling suggestion that could have explosive international repercussions if the senator's suspicions are not corroborated. The entire affair began less than a week ago when Senator Edwards, returning from a short vacation, stopped off in New Orleans to have a look at the Mardi Gras.
Dean Edwards! What? Who is it?
Dean, how are you?
I'm fine, but who are you?
What? You mean you don't recognize me? It hasn't been that long since college.
Well, maybe not, but I don't remember any pirates wearing masks on the campus.
Oh, I forgot. I'm in costume. There. Remember this pirate without a mask now?
The voice was familiar, but how could I forget the face? George Banning. How are you, George?
Wonderful, wonderful. I don't have to ask how you are. I read about you in the papers practically every day.
Still exaggerating, George.
Hey, come on, let's get out of this crowd, huh? Let's go in this restaurant here where we can talk.
Now, this is better.
Yeah, we can talk here without being disturbed. Not even by the waiters. They're all watching the parade.
Well, what are you doing in New Orleans, George? As I remember, your home was in Chicago.
Was is right. Been living here for 7 years now. I'm with International House.
Oh, the trading center in the free trade zone, huh?
Yeah. It's a wonderful thing, Dean. Each year it grows in importance. Serves as a clearinghouse and a stimulator for all sorts of international trade. It's made New Orleans one of the largest ports in the world.
Yeah. Done lots of good for our relations with Central and South America, too.
Yeah. Well, now, what are you doing here? Official business?
No. The Senate is in short recess. I thought I'd stop off here on my way back to Washington and take a look at the Mardi Gras.
Well, I'm mighty glad you did. We can... Hey, wait a minute. You're just the guy I ought to talk to.
All right. Talk away.
No, Dean, I'm serious. I came across something a few weeks ago. Something you should be interested in. Could be pretty important.
Well, what sort of thing, George?
Well, it's hard to put into words, but I've got a feeling about it.
Well, feelings are important sometimes. What is it?
60,000 tons of precision steel.
Oh, what about it?
Well, you know how it is sometimes when you try to pinpoint something very elusive, like putting your thumb on a drop of mercury. It scoots away.
Uh-huh.
I can't get any information on that steel. I know where it's going, know what it's supposed to be used for, know what shipping line carries it. And yet I can't get any real information.
Now, take it easy now. First, the shipping line.
The Tassel Steamship Company.
Tassel. Fine. An American concern?
No. Republic of Vanadad.
Uh-huh. Local offices here?
Oh, yes. But there never seems to be anybody there.
I see. Now, second, where does the steel go?
The Caltona Sewing Machine Company in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Well, now, what's the problem?
Did you ever hear of a Caltona sewing machine?
Nope. But maybe South America has.
Yeah. It's a very small company. Point is, what do they do with all that steel? This shipment a few weeks ago wasn't the first large shipment to them either.
Well, who owns the Caltona Sewing Machine Company?
Fellow by the name of Tassel.
Oh. Of the shipping company?
Probably the same.
But you don't know?
Well, it's a logical assumption.
Have you spoken to him?
No, I can't.
Why not?
Can't ever reach him. Not here in New Orleans, not in Brazil, not in Vanidad either.
The Republic of Vanidad. Oh, that's where the Tassel Steamship Company operates from.
That's right. You got to understand, Dean, that since I work in International House, I've got to be circumspect. I can't go barging around asking questions willy-nilly and sticking my nose in where it doesn't belong. But one thing stands out in this whole business with the steel shipments. I can't ever pin down the elusive Mr. Tassel.
And that's a lot of steel.
I thought perhaps you could bring it to the attention of the right parties in Washington.
And I'm still on vacation, George. Perhaps I could look into it a bit. If 60,000 tons of high-grade steel found its way behind the Iron Curtain, well, I certainly want to know about it.
Oh, no, wait, Dean. I didn't mean for you to undertake this thing yourself.
Well, I'm not undertaking anything yet, except maybe a taxi ride to the local Tassel Steamship Company's offices before I go back to my hotel tonight.
I confess the whole thing's been bothering me. I'm relieved to have you take the weight of it off my shoulders.
I'll bet that much steel is heavy.
Especially if it comes at you out of an enemy cannon or a bomb bay door.
Driver, pull up at the corner there, will you? Wait for me, please.
You ring the bell?
Yes. This is the Tassel Steamship Company, isn't it?
Yeah, right, ain't so good. What is it you want? This is the Tassel Steamship Company, all right, but we're closed for the night.
I saw your lights on, and I thought maybe there'd be somebody here I could talk to.
Just me. I'm the watchman.
Well, I'm sorry to bother you, old-timer. I don't suppose Mr. Tassel would be here this time of night, but I thought I'd try.
Not this time of night nor any other time, day or night.
Oh. You ever see him at all?
Nope. Guess I'd have to go to Brazil or Vanidad, maybe. Know where Vanidad is, don't you? In Central America.
Yes.
Sure. Thought you did. Now, if you don't mind, I've got them around to attend to.
How many ships in your company?
Oh, half dozen or more. Liberty ships.
Uh-huh. What is this place, a warehouse?
Yep, steel warehouse. Warehouse for steel. Look, you can come back tomorrow and get all the dope.
Not if I can't see Mr. Tassel. What other shipments do you make outside of steel, old-timer?
None that I know of. It just happens I know something about that steel. All of it first grade. Could use it for precision work. I used to be a machinist during the war. Worked a million machines, I can tell you.
The kind of steel you'd use in sewing machines?
Oh, maybe a little bit of it for the moving parts, but not in place of the cast iron.
60,000 tons.
That make enough sewing machine parts to outfit the whole world.
I see. Well, thanks, old-timer. That Mr. Tassel is elusive, all right, George. I couldn't reach him by phone in Caltona, Brazil, or in Vanidad, either.
Well, I guess the best thing, then, is to turn it over to the authorities in Washington.
I intend to, after I find out a little more. But that larger shipment of steel is important, and, well, I might be able to track it down before it gets into the wrong hands.
You're going to Brazil?
That's right. And if I have to the Republic of Vanidad, too.
Say, I really got you involved, didn't I?
I'm glad you did, George.
Well, look, if you do get to Vanidad, you could look up a friend of mine. Name's Jess Fogarty, with the American consulate there. He knows his way around.
Good. I'll do that.
Good luck, Dean.
Yes, sir, Senator Edwards. I am in charge of the Caltona Sewing Machine Company when Mr. Tassel is not here.
I've made a long trip, Senor Gristidas, just to see Mr. Tassel.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, perhaps you can help me, Senor. How much business did your company do last year?
Well, we are a small concern, but our sales are increasing, senor.
How much, Senor Gristidas?
In dollars, it comes to $35,000 last year, see.
Mm-hmm. That's not bad for so small a factory.
No, senor.
But it doesn't seem likely you'd use 60,000 tons of steel.
Well, I am not the purchasing agent, Senator Edwards.
Who is?
Mr. Tassel himself.
How often do you see him?
How often? Well, not so very often. Once, perhaps twice each year.
Where does he spend his time?
I do not know, Senator.
What happens if you have to reach him quickly?
But why should I want to reach him quickly?
Any number of reasons, Senor Gristidas. From the quick look I had of your factory, I should think he'd be here now trying to straighten it out.
Huh?
Poorly equipped, undermanned. As though you aren't doing $35 worth of business, much less $35,000.
Oh, senor.
Furthermore, I don't know much about sewing machines, but I'd say this isn't your whole operation.
Oh, no, Senator Edwards. We have, how do you call it, subcontractors.
Uh-huh. Who?
Well, the Interworld Manufacturing Company, for one.
Interworld?
See, Senator Edwards? You spoke of that 60,000 tons of steel. We allocate 6,000 tons to them.
You don't do any overseas trade, then, do you?
No, senor. We sell only to South America.
I see. Now, this Interworld Manufacturing Company, where is it located? Perhaps I can take a taxi and...
Taxi, Senator Edwards. Maybe a water taxi, no? The Interworld Manufacturing Company is in the Republic of Vernidad.
Senator Edward?
Yes?
Jess Fogarty, the consulate. How do you do, sir?
Oh, thank you for meeting me. George Banning had some nice things to say about you.
That's how I knew that you'd be on this plane. George called me by phone. He asked me to meet you.
Well, thanks.
Not at all. It's a pleasure to meet a United States Senator. We haven't even had an investigating committee down here in years.
Well, here's a one-man committee.
George briefed me on what you're trying to do. Any luck?
Not the least bit. Trying to pin down the never-present Mr. Tassel is like shelling peanuts with mittens on.
Well, you've tracked him down. He's here in Bernadette.
Good. But first, I've got to find a concern called Interworld Manufacturing Company.
Yes, Senator.
And, oh, yes. I wanted to find out whether the Mr. Tassel who owns the Caltona Sewing Machine Company is the same Mr. Tassel who owns the Tassel Steamship Company.
I don't know about the Caltona Sewing Machine Company, Senator, but the man who owns Interworld and the man who owns the Tassel Steamship Company are the same man. Mr. Emery Tassel himself.
I see. But coming in on the plane, I noticed a half-dozen ships loading crates in the harbor. Any of those the Tassel Line ships?
All of them. They're taking on cargo from Interworld.
Headed for where?
Oh, someplace in the Near East.
Oh. I think we ought to take a look at that cargo.
Well, we'll have to move then. Those ships are due to leave port in less than an hour.
Well, let's get a cab. We've got to get to the dock. And fast.
November 2nd, 1952, Freedom USA on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. More now of Tyrone Power and Freedom USA from November 2nd, 1952.
Now, back to Tyrone Power, starring as Senator Dean Edwards in Freedom, USA, and the second act of our story.
Edwin C. Hill from Washington, D.C., ladies and gentlemen. Senator Dean Edwards, his vacation interrupted in New Orleans by the suspicion that 60,000 tons of high-grade steel is somehow disappearing upon being shipped out of this country, finds the trail leading first to Caltona, a small port in Brazil, and now to the Republic of Vernidad, a small neighbor in Central America. At the moment, he's in a taxi with young Jess Fogarty, a subordinate in the American consulate in Vernidad, headed for the harbor.
All I know is that 60,000 tons of steel are involved in this one shipment.
George told me there were 3 other shipments in the past several months.
Going somewhere. Not to Caltona, Brazil.
The bills of lading in order?
Everything's in order. 6,000 tons were delivered here to the Interworld Manufacturing. They're supposed to be doing subcontracting for the sewing machine company.
Maybe they are.
Sure. Maybe the whole thing's perfectly open and above board. But it doesn't look right to me.
Well, I've done some checking myself. The cargo is toys.
Toys?
Yeah, it's on their bills of lading. I checked through the port authority here. Wooden toys.
You ever see any of these toys, Mr. Fogarty?
No, I haven't, Senator. What's on your mind?
Toys. I'll bet it's steel in those crates.
It would explain the missing 60,000 tons, wouldn't it?
Completely.
Yeah, well, we'll be at the dock in a few minutes.
Well, there's a lot of them at any rate. Who do we have to see to get one of these crates open?
It's a Sunday. I doubt if we can get anyone with that kind of authority on a Sunday.
Careful with that. Get a move on.
They seem to be in a hurry.
These aren't regular stevedores. They're crewmen of the ships.
Uh-huh. I wonder, Mr. Fogarty, if there wouldn't be a loose board or two in one of these crates. On this side where it couldn't be seen.
Senator, I think I know what you mean.
Looking for something, gentlemen?
Oh, Mr. Hogarth, I've met you once or twice trying to get in to see Mr. Tassel, haven't I?
That's right, Fogarty.
Well, I'd like to introduce you to
I don't
Senator...
need no introduction. Hello, Senator Edwards.
You're well informed.
I thought I'd be seeing you, Senator, when I saw that airliner coming in.
Senor Grastidas?
That's right, Senator. He telephoned us from Brazil. Now, what can I do for you?
We wanted to see what's inside these crates you're loading.
It says it on the side there, see? Toys.
Kind of heavy for toys, aren't they?
Well, Senator, they're toys and toys. I wouldn't know. I just supervise things for Mr. Tassel here.
Mr. Tassel would know?
Yeah, he'd know. Why don't you speak to him?
I've been trying to. I've come quite a distance to speak to him.
Well, it ain't so hard, Senator. Just take that taxi of yours out of the Interworld plant. He's there.
You're an American, Mr. Hogarth?
Sure.
If there weren't toys in these crates, Mr. Hogarth, but steel, going to a country on which the United States has placed an embargo, wouldn't you be interested?
Only one thing I'm interested in, Senator. My job. My job's to get these ships loaded, and I'm doing it.
Hear no evil, see no evil. If you're doing something that can hurt your country, doesn't it mean anything to you?
I'm not doing anything but my job.
Like turning your face away from a beggar or a cripple? You think by not looking at him you could shut him out of existence. But he's still there, Mr. Hogarth, whether you look at him or not. And you can't shut out a whistling bomb by covering your ears either.
What about you, Senator Edwards? You think you can keep from getting burned when you play with matches? All right, Truman, get a move on. Got just 30 minutes to finish loading. Come on.
Well, Senator?
Fogarty, I don't care who you have to see or what you have to do. We've got to stop those ships from leaving port.
Perhaps if I get in touch with Valdez at the Port Authority.
Any way you have to do it.
Where are you going?
To see Mr. Tassel at the Interworld Manufacturing Company.
It's quite an honor having you visit me here, Senator Edwards.
I consider myself lucky finding you, Mr. Tassel.
I understand you're conducting a one-man investigation of me.
Something like that.
Well, just tell me how I can help you.
I'm trying to find out what happened to 60,000 tons of high-grade steel.
Oh, well, that's simple, Senator. You're speaking of this last cargo, no doubt. 54,000 tons went to my sewing machine company in Brazil. The other 6,000 tons came to me here in Venedad.
You're loading 6 ships right now. I'd like to inspect the cargo.
Oh, but that's a cargo of toys. My Interworld company makes them, Senator. Why should I delay the scheduled departure?
So I can inspect the cargo, Mr. Tassel.
Senator, I'm afraid I can't help you there. But I assure you everything's in order. The bills of lading are with the port authorities, and, well, there are toys in the shipment. That's all. Any other way I can convince you, Senator?
You're supposed to be making sewing machine parts for your company in Brazil.
That's right.
Perhaps a look at your factory.
Excellent. I'll be delighted to show you around. Of course, today being Sunday, we only have a skeleton crew working.
I understand.
Right through here.
You're an American, Mr. Tassel?
Of course. Born in Philadelphia.
Well, if 60,000 tons of high-grade steel, or more, wound up behind the Iron Curtain, wouldn't you be concerned about it?
Let's be frank with each other, Senator. You do suspect such a thing.
Yes.
All I can say is do your investigating. I've got a perfectly legal setup.
Legal, perhaps, but very involved, Mr. Tassel.
No, Senator. It's very simple. I have a sewing machine factory in Brazil and this Interworld company here in Venedad and a steamship line. The steel I buy goes to Brazil for the sewing machines. A small portion of that steel comes here for some special parts I make here. My steamship line transports the steel for me, and it also transports the toys I make here to all parts of the world.
There's only one flaw, Mr. Tassel. I don't think you make sewing machines.
I don't know how to convince you. You see here my toy shop in operation.
Yeah? Looks authentic enough.
It is authentic. I ship toys around the world.
But where do you do your parts making for the sewing machine?
Right through here.
Not working today.
Sunday.
Mm-hmm. What are those, power presses?
Power shears, Senator.
You'd use them to cut large pieces of steel into smaller parts.
That's right.
And those machines, the ones covered up?
Well, that one there is a lathe, and the other is a milling machine.
You'll forgive my ignorance, Mr. Tassel. And those two smaller machines, drill presses?
You're not so ignorant, Senator.
That comprises the total machine work here.
That's right.
It's not a big operation.
No, sir.
Much like your Brazil company.
And the conclusion of Freedom USA from November 2nd, 1952 follows these important messages. You're listening to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite station. Thanks for tuning in to Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, heard on great radio stations like KBBR in Coos Bay, Oregon, also KSEY-FM in Seymour, Texas, WGEM in beautiful Quincy, Illinois, and KGEZ in Kalispell, Montana. Now the conclusion of Freedom USA, starring Tyrone Power, November 2nd, 1952.
Now, Senator, is there anything else I can do for you?
Yes, Mr. Tassel. Stop those ships from leaving port. I still think there's approximately 60,000 tons of steel aboard. I want the entire cargo inspected.
Senator, that's the one thing I cannot do.
Shall I tell you what I think, Mr. Tassel?
Please do.
I think that instead of 54,000 tons of steel being delivered to Brazil and 6,000 tons delivered here, it's just reversed.
I see.
I think you do a token amount of work with the 6,000 tons and are free to ship the balance to a country who will pay you exorbitant prices for it. In any form they get it, just sheared down to small sizes.
It's a lot of investigating you've done for such a short time, Senator, and a lot of assumptions you've
It'll
made.
be investigated further, Mr. Tassel. I think also that you're really shipping toys out now, but just a fraction of the cargo is toys, while your bills of lading say the toys are the only cargo aboard. Underneath, there's all this steel.
I'm afraid you'll never know, Senator. By now, those ships have cleared harbor and are out to sea.
Are they, Mr. Tassel? Mr. Fogarty was going to prevent that.
Mr. Fogarty didn't do his job then, Senator. Take a look out this window.
Sorry, Senator, I just couldn't get Valdez in time. He was out in the country.
That's all right, Fogarty. Will you phone George Banning and tell him I'm on my way back to Washington?
Yes, of course I will. Senator.
Yes?
The way you explain the setup is probably the way Tassel does operate. There's only one thing I don't understand.
What's that?
That shipment of toys and steel, now how does it get into port? The customs inspectors...
Well, by the time those ships get into port, Fogarty, the only thing left on them is toys.
Yeah, but what do they do with the steel? How do they deliver it to our potential enemies?
During Prohibition days in America, the rum runners used to have a way of doing that, Fogarty. They'd have a shipload of liquor and sail along the coast. Small boats would meet them on the high seas and take their quota. As the ship proceeded, the liquor would be unloaded, so that by the time the ship put into harbor, there'd be nary a drop of liquor aboard.
Oh, I see. You think the same procedure works for the steel?
I do. Crate by crate, till by the time the ships reach their destination, only the toys are left.
Well, we've missed this time, but if they try it again...
We haven't missed this time. Yet, Fogarty. I'm going to stop them if it's humanly possible.
I don't know how, Senator, but good luck.
Edwin C. Hill, ladies and gentlemen, where you've been listening to Senator Dean Edwards speaking on the floor of the Senate chamber. And the big questions still are, will the senator gain the support of his colleagues in his effort to force the 6 vessels of the Tassel steamship line into the nearest port? And if so, will his suspicions be borne out that the cargo of toys is only a cover for a huge amount of high-grade steel, a vital war material destined for Iron Curtain nations? I see that below the senator's finished, and the chair has called for a voice vote. All in favor? Aye. And opposed?
Yes, George. Well, it was the first time we used the air arm of the Coast Guard for patrolling action of this kind. I just received word here in Washington. The ships were boarded, and it was exactly as we suspected. Steel-filled crates marked toys. Huh? Oh, sure, there were some legitimate toys, but we've got the steel back, and that's what counts. and we're going ahead with a full investigation. Yes, the elusive Mr. Tassel has finally been pinned down. Pinned down by 60,000 tons of precision steel. This is Tyrone Power, ladies and gentlemen. One of the things I like about America is that document which is the very backbone of our way of life. I refer, of course, to our Constitution. Like the Holy Bible, it is a work of art. And like the Bible, it would do us all good to open its pages and read it regularly. It's the kind of reading that's inspiring, full of faith and honesty. Read it and see what I mean.
Next week, may we invite you to again visit our national capital for another absorbing episode of Freedom, USA, starring Tyrone Power. In the interest of good government, we urge you to listen to these important stories from Washington, D.C. Freedom, USA.
November 2nd, 1952, Freedom USA here on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Now on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox, an episode of the soap opera Claudia from November 2nd, 1948.
And now, Claudia.
It certainly is different, eating breakfast on a day like today.
Well, breakfast is the same.
Oh, not to me it isn't. The orange juice is more orangey, the eggs are more eggy.
There she goes again, Mama.
Poor old Claudia. Her orange juice has gone to her head.
The trouble with you two is you have no souls. David, now honestly, tell me. Doesn't everything taste different when you don't have to rush off to the train?
I usually have time just to taste it, that's all.
Oh, it's such a beautiful morning, too. I'm so glad you're staying home with me today.
I did not stay home with you, young woman, so don't get conceited.
Then what did you stay home with?
The United States government.
Awful crowded. I don't see any United States government around this house, do you, Mama?
In every corner, under every carpet.
Isn't it too bad we don't have election day more often? Then David could stay home more often.
David, when you go downtown, you can drop me off at the station, can't you?
Is there any special train you want to catch, Mother?
No, they run fairly often in the morning, don't they?
Punctual as a timetable.
Fine.
You're just going to vote and come right back out to Eastbrook, aren't you, Mama?
Do I have to tell you now?
That's telling.
I'll call you from New York, and that's my last word.
What are you going in for? Dentist appointment?
I told you to vote.
I know you, Mama. The dentist appointment came first, I bet you.
Leave your poor mother alone.
Thank you, David.
I only wanted to know which tooth. But if she doesn't want to tell me... David, what are you going to do all day?
I am going to vote.
Well, that's not going to take you all day, is it?
Might.
How it might.
I'm simply going to take my time at it.
If you took all the time in the world at it, it still wouldn't take you more than 5 minutes.
Yeah. Now, how do you know? Have you ever voted?
I studied it at school.
Oh.
David, she went to school. I'll vouch for that. But if she learned anything or not, I won't give you my opinion.
All you have to do to vote is to go into a little closet by yourself. Pull a little thingamajig on the... What's this? And that's your vote.
Simple as pie.
So how is it going to take you all day?
Well, I want to think about it. Find out a little bit more about some of the men who are up for office. Talk to some of the fellows downtown and take my time about it. You know, casting a vote is a very important matter.
Important poof. It's a beautiful day, and you're home from the office, and I don't see why you should waste it all by voting.
Well, when you're older, maybe you'll understand.
That's something else I want to discuss with you.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh's right.
Why does a person have to be 21 to vote, anyway?
No, because that's the way it is in the Constitution.
Well, it's high time somebody did something about it. I'm half tempted to write a letter.
Go ahead. Write a letter.
Who are you going to write a letter to?
Oh, I don't know. There are plenty of people who should know about this. If I'm old enough to give birth to a citizen, I'm certainly old enough to be able to vote.
Mm-hmm. Who says?
I says.
Oh.
And what's more, I think to vote, it's even more important to be intelligent than it is to be old.
Then you'll never be allowed to vote. You're lucky that all you'll have to know is to be able to read and write.
Well, anyway, I feel very left out of things. And if there's any excuse, Mama's voting, David's voting, Fritz and Bertha are voting. By the time I'm old enough to vote, Bobby'll be old enough to vote, too.
Your
It's
daughter
humiliating.
is given to slight exaggeration, Mrs. Brown.
Yes, slight, Mr. Norton.
Well, to get back. How are we going to spend today, David? It's not every day your office is closed in the middle of the week.
Oh, we'll see.
We'll see. Just because you vote, you talk like an old man. Well, I'm through with breakfast.
I, too.
Well, I'm going upstairs and get myself ready, David.
You're right, Mrs. Brown.
It's discrimination. That's what it is, discrimination.
That's what is.
Not letting me vote. Are you sure there isn't a law someplace that says mothers are allowed to vote no matter how old they are?
I'm sure there is no such law.
I bet there is.
What's
Should
more,
be.
you aren't fit to vote, young woman.
Well, that's a nice thing to say to your one and only wife. If I'm good enough to have married you, certainly I'm good enough to vote.
Not at all. I'm just easy to please.
Thanks.
I don't even think you know who's running for what.
Now, what do you take me for, a moron?
I refuse to answer on the grounds that anything I might say would be incriminating. Who's
Company.
Tucker here.
Oh, Tucker.
All was open, so I just up and walked in.
Mr. Tucker, welcome to the Norton residence.
Well, what are you doing here, Mr. Tucker? I thought you'd be downtown electioneering.
I come by to pick you up, son. Thought you might like to ride downtown with me.
That's very nice of you, Mr. Tucker. I certainly would like to ride downtown with you today.
You have to go this minute?
I like to get down early, Mrs. Norton. I like to get my vote in right there amongst the first.
Well, I'm ready anytime you are.
Who are you going to vote for, Mr. Tucker?
Now, young lady, that's a leading question.
Leading? Leading where?
Cluck.
Man's vote is his own private property, like the zeros onto his bank account. You won't hear me spilling the beans.
I thought everyone went around telling who they were going to vote
Well,
for.
when you vote for the President of the United States, it don't matter very much because he ain't a personal relative of yours. But when you vote on the Eastbrook town ticket, you keep your mouth shut. Yep, shut tight. At least Jared Tucker does. I got too many friends and too many enemies running for office.
Say, there's some questions I want to ask you, Mr. Tucker, about the records of some of the men who are up for election.
I'll be glad to give you any information you want, without bias, without prejudice. Just my personal opinion. That's all.
Well, let's get going then. We'll talk in the car.
David, you're in such a hurry. You're only one of millions of people, so it doesn't matter which way you vote much, does it?
But it does matter very much, darling. Whether you're one of millions or one of 200. Doesn't it, Mr. Tucker?
I was about to say, Mr. Norton, I don't care how you vote when you're electing the president, the vice president, and the high muckety-mucks. You vote your party. You vote Republican or Democrat or whatever else you want to vote. But when you're voting for the Eastbrook selectmen, or the Eastbrook head of the Board of Education, or for an Eastbrook judge, then politics don't matter to me. They don't matter to me one drop, no.
By politics, you mean Republican or Democrat, is that right?
Yep, you can forget all that party stuff when you're voting in your hometown. Vote for your man. That's my motto. Whether he's got red hair, blue hair, brown eyes, or blue eyes, whether his great-grandfather was vice president, whether he owns 400 acres of farmland, or whether he gives buckets of dollars to his party, that don't matter to me neither. Vote for your man. For all I care, you can split your ticket higher than a kite.
Split your ticket. What's that mean?
You know what a ticket is.
Certainly, a ticket is a little business you get when you go on a train or go to the movie or something.
A ticket is also the choice of candidates for election of office.
What do you want to split it for?
Splitting a ticket, Mrs. Norton, means voting not according to a party, but according to a particular man. Choosing the best, no matter what party's from, see?
But I thought that's what voting always was, choosing the best possible man.
That's what voting always should be, but don't always work out that way.
No, sir.
I figure that in national elections, there's something to be said about the party system. But when it comes right down to a local election, I want the best man in the job. And I don't care nothing about anything else.
Yeah, my feelings precisely.
Say, this is getting exciting. It seems much more personal than I thought it would. David, you are actually going to have something to do with the people who are going to run Eastbrook.
You're darn right I'm going to have something to do with them.
And believe you me, Mrs. Norton, if this town is run correct, the country will be run correct, too. If Eastbrook can govern itself well, if its citizens can take their responsibilities for matters of justice, if we sell our grain at a reasonable price, and if we live the way we should live, then I ain't going to have anything to worry about when it comes to the United States of America. Because when it's all said and done, the United States is just a collection of Eastbrooks.
Oh, say, Mr. Tucker, I understand that Hankins is running for sheriff.
Lawyer Hankins?
Down off Main Street.
David, Lawyer Hankins is the lawyer who settled the deed on this house and arranged for the bill of sale.
That's who he is. That's who.
You mean he is running for sheriff?
That's what he is. Yes, that's what.
I never knew anybody who was a sheriff before.
Well, he ain't sheriff yet. Not yet, no.
You voting for him?
Well, I ain't saying.
He's an awfully nice man. Does he want to be sheriff badly?
Bad enough to run for it.
Well, then I hope he gets it.
Well, wanting ain't the reason enough for getting it, ain't.
Who's running opposite Lawyer Hankins?
Amos Peters is running opposite Hankins.
What about Peters?
Oh, he ain't a fella you've heard much of. Quiet, sort of. Sort of a principled man. You might say he's a good citizen. I'm not so sure he wants this job.
Well, if Amos Peters doesn't want the job and Lawyer Hankins does, then...
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. I think you've influenced my vote.
Ain't influenced nothing, son. You vote your conscience. And always be a little suspicious of people in high places that want things too much.
You know, this is all so personal. If I were allowed to vote, I'd feel as if I were sort of putting my hand right plunk into the middle of the government.
You would be.
For the first time in my life, I wish I were older. I have to wait 2 years. Oh, dear. Just think, David, all over the country today, people are going to the polls and they're voting. Imagine. Millions and millions of people all getting their chance to speak their piece, choosing among their neighbors and friends and enemies the men and women who are going to govern them.
That's a very special honor.
It's democracy.
And ain't to be given to everybody.
Well, it should be.
Yep, that it should, yes, indeed. Should be given to each man and woman born the right to speak up for himself. We're kind of lucky we're where we are, ain't we?
We certainly are. David, you take your time voting. And vote carefully. You're voting for me and for Bobby. And since the whole world is watching us today...
Yep, the whole world is watching, all right, all over Europe. People in Germany, France, all the slave people of the world watching America vote. The common people are watching with hope in their hearts. The tyrants with fear in their hearts. It's kind of exciting, ain't it? And important.
When young people plan a party, they seldom raise the question, what do we serve? Because the answer's a foregone conclusion. It's Coke. Wherever they meet, whatever they do, ice-cold Coca-Cola is part of the picture. They like to have Coke on hand at home to offer friends and to enjoy themselves. If there are young folks in your household, why not please them by bringing home a case of Coke today?
Hold on there a moment, Mr. King. Don't start off on another sentence till I talk to you.
All right, not another word. What's on your mind, Mr. Tucker?
Oh, nothing on my mind. Just on my tongue. I was aiming to offer you a lift downtown if you was aiming to be going.
Well, that's awfully nice of you, and as a matter of fact, Mr. Tucker, I was aiming to be going.
There's room for you here in my truck. While you finish what you're saying, I'll go up and take a wink at young Master Norton. I ain't set eyes on him for weeks.
Oh, that Bobby is a mighty big boy now, you know. Something to be proud of. At least as far as David and Claudia are concerned.
David Norton ain't the doting kind of father, is he, hey? You think he is?
Well, I think he could be, and I couldn't tell you exactly right now, but tomorrow I'll know the answer to that question.
Oh, you will, eh? Well, you'll have to pass it on to me. In the meantime, finish up what you was aiming to say, and say it quick.
Well, Mr. Tucker, I wasn't going to say anything very much. You didn't interrupt anything that hasn't been done here before. I was just of a mind to tell you that every day Monday through Friday, Claudia comes to you transcribed with the best wishes of your friendly neighbor who bottles Coca-Cola. So listen again tomorrow at the same time. And now this is Joe King saying au revoir.
November 2nd, 1948, Claudia on Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox. Thank you for making us a part of your day. Would you thank this station and support their advertisers? It's their kindness and courtesy that allows us to be with you each and every time you roll around here on your favorite station. Miss a day? You don't have to miss a single show. All of our shows are available on demand at classicradio.stream. Classicradio.stream. Stream our shows. Find a list of places where you can download our shows. You can also learn about building a classic radio collection of your own. You can find our social media links. You can contact me directly. Or if you like what we do and would like to help us expand our classic radio collection, you can buy me a copy. That's what that buy me a copy money goes for. You'll see that link along with everything else I just told you about at classicradio.stream. Thank you for tuning in. Tell all your friends the great radio shows are right here at this spot on the dial. Classic Radio Theater with Wyatt Cox on your favorite radio station.